Yeah, thanks. Thanks, folks in Texas, for reaching out and asking me to come. I really like speaking in conferences and user groups. This is a little challenge to me, not being able to see each other and work off the crowd. But you know, listening to the sessions already, super rich content. Super, you know, Jason's session last on cloud value, and Michael Niehaus is on ATP, and then that, or on Autopilot, in that ATP session, all great sessions. In fact, a lot of those sessions duplicated a lot of the content I'm going to talk about. So I thought maybe what I could spend more of my time on today was doing Q&A. I am getting, so let's see. So, you know, post your questions. I have some people who are going to help me filter through the questions, and if we're heavy on questions, then we'll focus more on questions. If not, then I'll go through my content. And I'm going to pause 30 seconds and switch to a different Wi-Fi really fast.
So while he's doing that, folks, any questions that you have, please go ahead and post those. And these questions will be, David will absolutely get to them. And if he doesn't know the answer, he'll point you to somebody that does.
Am I back?
Great.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. In fact, were there any questions that were posted earlier in the day that would be interesting to start with?
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't I just I'll just pick a couple here and we'll just keep going until you say stop, or until quarter after. Right. So the first one comes from Chris. Is there a roadmap item for co-management of one config manager site managing multiple tenants? He says that it's not just CSPs that need it, but those of us in public education that are supporting multiple school districts could also use it. Yeah,
it's a great question. You know, multi-tenancy is something that is super interesting. We've thought about in a lot of ways, and it goes two ways. It goes having multiple config man hierarchies to a single Intune or AD tenant, or it goes multiple Intune or AD tenants to a single config man hierarchy. We have now good support for that first one. And if you search, you'll see documentation. We have that for Intune. We also have it for desktop analytics, so you can have multiple config man hierarchies against a single tenant. And this is really useful for things like having a test lab or pre-production as well as production. We are looking at the option of how we would get it right to have multiple Intune tenants for a single config man. There's some architectural challenges. If this was really easy, we would have done it already. That getting the security and the RBAC and the granularities of it right is a challenge, but it's something that's on our roadmap for sure. And thanks for raising it as a EDU, a school issue. We do normally think of it as a CSP issue, but I can understand it being an EDU issue as well.
Great, thanks for the question, Chris. Here's the next one. Will, they say SCCM, will MCM ever integrate with IoT devices for things like over-the-air firmware updates, integration with IoT Hub, device provisioning services, reporting, etc.?
Yeah, so the way, this is interesting because we have had a history of IoT integration with ConfigMan. We, you know, if you go back, we supported Windows Embedded. We still support Windows Embedded as a platform inside ConfigMan. We also shipped a version of Mobile Device Manager we called it on-prem MDM. You know, what we've learned, I guess I would say in the last 10 years, is for these very small IoT devices, cloud connectivity seems to be really important and seems to be the easiest way to get to them. You know, they're not always sitting on a corp network, which is where ConfigMan's strength has been historically. And this is why we took the MDM solution that was in ConfigMan, we lifted it up into Intune because it was more ubiquitously available for devices. So as we think about IoT, we have strategy on that. We're thinking about it, but it is likely not to be a ConfigMan solution. It's more likely to be an Intune or more appropriate Microsoft Endpoint Manager solution. But yes, it's on our radar. Is there, I'm curious for the person that asked the question, is there specific scenarios you're looking at or gaps that you think are there now that specifically for IoT or frontline devices that you'd like to see us cover? And I know we're not in a format where I can iterate back and forth with that very quickly, but if you want to come back, if they give more details, I'd be curious.
Yeah, just post it as a new question, and we'll make sure that we ask it here in a few seconds. So next question, just because as Jason alluded to, it's one of your favorite all-around questions. This particular one comes from Nick. We monitor our CMG connected devices through monitoring/cloud management within the MCM's console. The question is there a way to hook into that and output that to a web interface, something that can be shared with management?
Okay, did Jason say this is my favorite question because it's a web console question?
Web console in general.
So, let's see. So help me understand the scenario again. They want to hook into
monitoring their CMG connected devices through the monitoring/cloud management within the console, and they want to hook that into some sort of web interface to show to their management. I
see. And I assume that the ask is, can they get more data via our APIs? And there's, if you've been paying attention, we've been modernizing a lot of aspects of ConfigMan. Some of that code is 20 years old. It's getting less and less all the time, but one of them that is old is what we call the WMI provider that lets you get access to our data. Over the last couple of years, Mark Silvio on my team and his team have replaced that with a modern UI that's REST-based. They call it the admin service. And if you want a lot of details on it, I believe Adam Gross, the MVP, has put a lot of details out on that. But that should give you access to this kind of things. It's easy to add a web UI on top of. There might be a gap of some of the data related to CMG, but filed as a user voice, and we'll definitely look into making sure that that data is there for you to build UI on top of it. And Jason, Sandy's, for the record, it was 300 person years. But we might be down to like 270 now.
Okay, so we got one from Scott here, and I think it's more, maybe we can expand on it, make it a little bit more general. But if they have co-managed devices, is there a path that you would recommend to remove them from the config manager picture later on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess off the top of my head, I could come up with the 10 manual steps you do to do it. I think this question means that we haven't done a good job of documenting that, and I know we haven't made it super easy. So this is an action I can go take to say, if you started in ConfigMan, went to co-management, and you're in Intune now, and you don't need ConfigMan any more on those devices, what's the easiest way to remove it? We haven't built that programmatically yet. We could dock it and then look at building it programmatically.
Right. 1 second here. Sorry, we got a lot of responses. I'm just going down through here. Let's see. So just some feedback here from one of our attendees. I feel there's confusion for a greenfield install. Should config manager be part of the picture, or do you want to have us move to a pure modern management infrastructure?
Yeah, I think these slides are public, but I think our guidance is if a customer's starting and they don't have ConfigMan, they should look at starting with our cloud-only solution because it's the least amount of friction, it's easiest. We believe it's more turnkey, and only if they need some of the gaps that aren't yet addressed, then they can bring in ConfigMan into the picture. I mean, if our cloud solution provides everything you need, why would you use the one that's a little more expensive from a time and overhead point of view?
Okay. More feedback.
Actually, alternatively, and I think Jason addressed this too. However, if you already are in ConfigMan and you already are years of investment there and it's working, Don't panic and try to start over. Just attach to Intune and get value without undoing anything you've already done. In the future, we'll have more intelligence, more analytics that will help you make decisions on what things that you're doing well, what things that you could do better, and what workloads we can help you simplify or modernize. I have some slides on that a little bit later, but.
Okay. Get some more feedback on the question. Some workload can still work on Config Manager when you move it to Intune, and some of them do not. Do we have a clear article that draws a borderline between Intune and Config Manager when co-management is enabled?
I thought we did, but I'd have to understand an example of the workload that we're not clear on. Yeah, if we think there's documentation gaps there, give us a user voice item in the documentation area. Aaron is really good at working through those. Yeah.
Okay. What is the status of a cloud? What's the status of something like remote control through the CMG?
It's a good question. So let me see. I'm just going to skip ahead to some slides. I think, if this works. Let me come back. So, some of the, on this slide, you can see some of the big investments we're doing right now, especially with the pivot in the world to remote workers, is we're doing a lot of enabling of work from home scenarios. So you can see here's an example, just 6 improvements that are in CMG space. We're better auth. We removed a lot of the complexity around PKI. We continue to improve the usability around our token auth that's in CMG. There's the bottom 2 bullets here. I get asked about these all the time. So the top 4 are pretty close to being locked and loaded for the next release or 2. But remote control over CMG and CMG for CSPs, which is really about using, not using Azure Compute the way we do and making it so that it is more packagable and usable as CSPs. Both of these are, I guess if I'm being transparent, are actively being coded, but aren't without issues. It's likely that these 2 could show up in the next 6 months, but we're early in, I don't want to say, we're still in the middle of coding and working through it. So sometimes you're working in technical complexity like the 2 of these. There's issues that come up. Remote control, we did ship in tech preview over a year ago, and my bet is that we'll have it show up in tech preview in the next couple months again. Engineers gave me some really good news on that last week. But getting remote control to meet the quality bar and the security bar we have, since it's going to be working over the internet here, is something that we're really doing due diligence on.
Okay.
Any other queued up questions?
Oh yeah, we got a couple more here. Just another comment. It seems that a complete CM pivot guide with a lot of examples is very much needed. A little feedback for you, apparently. Next question.
Well, yeah. One of the things too, let's see, that might be next on this slide. Yeah, is we have collectively a really powerful community, right? So some very smart people, some people have done some amazing things with the technology that we all work together with. And one of the things that we've really been thinking around the last couple of years is how to better leverage the community. We talk about making ConfigMan cloud powered. Well, with what we just, I think, announced in the last couple of weeks is making ConfigMan more community powered. There's so many experts out there, but you have to be able to find them in the internet and search and then find their blogs. And so what we're really trying to do with Community Hub is lower the bar for sharing content. One of the things that is shareable through Community Hub is CM Pivot queries, as well as scripts that can be executed by CM Pivot. So I guess I'll say 2 points. I accept that we need better guidance and to raise our content on how to help you go through the learning curve of it. I mean, for many people, it's a new query language. It's not WQL, which many of you unfortunately had to learn. It's a new query language. And you know, for me, even sometimes I can't get it right. Like, how do you do it? How do you do a join and a not? And so we do need to do better content there. But also, I think we're going to accelerate the community's ability to use it by allowing them to publish and share queries and scripts with each other. Right now, what we've shipped with Community Hub is all the frameworks there, and Microsoft could publish into it, and we're working through what it takes to allow basically open source sharing through that model.
Okay, great. Ryan asks, is there any movement on decoupling WSUS from the software update point and just doing updates natively with configman?
There is, we work on this every day, but this is like moving Mount Rainier. It's a really big thing. You know, there's been some improvements in the patch stack around UUP. There's some forwarding improvements in drivers and how that's working. I don't know if we're publicly talking about that yet. We continue to work on it. WSUS isn't going away overnight, but it's something that we understand the need for customers to be able to patch predictably and efficiently. And sometimes problems with WSUS cause issues, so we have to make that. We have to definitely get rid of the problems around that. But hold tight for announcements around either UUP or driver patching, because those I think will be exciting.
Okay, kind of a specific one, but was there any code changes to the application model between 1902 and 2002? There were some apparently install issues during task sequencing.
I don't know if there was some changes to the app model, but there might have been some changes to how task sequences think about apps. You know, we've always had a little bit of a gap where package and programs, probably because they're older and have existed longer, worked better with task sequences, and apps always had kind of a list of exceptions. And I think that we've been trying to close that gap for a lot of our app usage and task sequences. Although there was one I wasn't aware of until just yesterday, that we added the ability to run a task sequence as a detection method of an app, but then that task sequence can't have apps in it. So we still have some work to do. I assume that the question comes from a place of there was some either bug or change in behavior that the customer experienced, and I don't know off the top of my head if there was some. We definitely didn't explicitly break anything. We're trying to improve things, but maybe you can reach out to us in Twitter, or if you have a support, and we can figure out what happened. But definitely there was changes in apps around how apps work inside task sequences to try to make them better and work more often.
Okay. Another question is something like eHTTP planned for BitLocker management?
Yes. So in fact, I guess I didn't make it on this. That would be a 7th bullet here under CMG, which is we got most of the BitLocker scenarios in, but some of the auth scenarios for when we want to get the BitLocker key and write it securely back to the site server, the database, or AAD. We currently, I think, I can't remember what version this is in, we still require domain join. And so in the cases where that's not there, we are looking at places where we can improve the auth. Yeah, that's the top one, really. And some of those improvements are going to work, not just in CMG, but in other areas.
Okay. Tom asks, are there any thoughts to integration with Beyond Trust Remote Assistance, BombGuard with Intune, similar to TeamViewer?
Yeah, I don't think we have anything. Yeah, let's see. That's a good request to put on user voice.
All right. Next, whatever happened to the client peer Pixie Responder? Is that still something that's being developed or worked on, or has that been pivoted to something else? And then the little subnote was, believe this was a feature that was initially supposed to be in 17 something tech preview.
Yeah, so let's see, how short can I make my diatribe on this? It's in preview. It probably will still be in preview. I struggle with some of the security implications of it. We have the technology and it works. The problem is, especially in this world of internet and work from home and CMG, the way Pixie works is you bare metal boot a machine and then you just ask anyone on the network, hey, does anyone have an image for me? And anyone that's willing to give you an image now can put whatever they want on your machine. We have that technology working. We want to see if we can raise the bar on making sure the image you get is something that IT intends for you to get.
I'd also encourage anyone that's interested to try it out in TP, use it, and submit feedback. It's a crucial part of our release process. And
oh, hey Rob, nice for you to join us on your day off.
Hey David, long time no see.
He's not getting a day off. He's been answering questions the whole time. So, all right, next question. Microsoft IT said at Ignite 2019 in November that they were moving towards Autopilot on new computers with cloud only and not co-managed. Is this something you can talk about?
Well, I think our intention, you have to understand with Microsoft IT, we always push all the limits, right? We want to make sure every technology we have that we can test and that we cover. So we do cloud only, we do Autopilot, cloud only, we do ConfigMan, because Microsoft is our first best test before we go to other customers. We do have an intention to grow all our technology so we can be cloud only 100% of the time. We still have a large percentage of clients at MSFT that are ConfigMan managed, as well as a large number of clients that are cloud only managed. So, you know, we continue to push the needle and try to modernize our technologies.
Okay, John asks, what's the best way to handle a rapid update deployment if the CVE is reported with Windows Update for Business?
I don't think I understand the question.
Not sure either. John, if you would maybe elaborate a little bit, just ask another question and add a little bit more. We'll get around to it here in a moment. We'll just go to the next one. Do you see Intune managing servers in the next couple of years?
That's a trick question, I think. Servers is something we look at all the time. Some of the technologies we depend on are only in client, and some of the scenarios between client and servers are quite different. So, for example, in ConfigMan, even, you know, you can't just patch for servers. We had to go back and forth almost for 5 years on cluster patching and orchestration groups, because once you bring servers into the picture, you're not talking about single devices, you're talking about the orchestration of them across many things. Would we ever build a cluster patching feature for servers into Intune? Probably not, but with tenant attached now, you will start seeing servers, if they're managed by ConfigMan, up in the Intune UI. Doing security for servers is really important, so knowing what our approach is going to be to make sure that you get ATP on servers and manage those is really important. You know, one thing that I don't know if people are getting their heads around, but if you think about what we're doing with ConfigMan tenant attach is you have ConfigMan working on-prem and it's doing its thing. It's been doing its thing for years. Now all of a sudden it's sending data up into your Intune tenant, and we get a full kind of master device list, whether it's Intune managed or co-managed or SCCM managed. Well, we don't need to limit this list to just those products. You know, if other things are managing Windows Update for Business or ATP, those things will start showing in the list. So we will have an experience. This is me speaking subjectively. I will have an experience where servers are in the Intune UI and you'll be able to do things with them. And those servers probably won't be enrolled in Intune, but you still will be able to control and influence them from inside the Intune UI.
Okay,
and that's something you start seeing now.
Was a very diplomatic answer. Can we get application groups to task sequences? I guess for in task sequences or for task sequences.
Yes, it's on the list.
On the list. Will TFTP finally be dropped in favor of HTTP for boot image download during Pixie boot?
It's under consideration.
All right, let me see. I'm going down through some more questions here. Keep them coming, guys. These are really good.
Johnny, it looks like John expanded on his question about the CVE updates, and I think he's looking for 0-day support within WFB.
You want to answer that, Jason?
I can just say that it's an often brought up thing or requirement from customers, and I know that it's in the backlog and being investigated, but I don't know the exact status at this time.
Yeah, that's the right answer.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. Has there been any movement on improving the reporting from SSRS with a usability or creation standpoint that does not rely on Power BI for web access?
Let's see.
And just so you know, Jason did throw you under the bus on this one and said it would be a good question for you.
Oh, thanks, Jason. I think, one of my team's challenges is if you look at user voice, there's like 4,000 asks in user voice. Where can we get the most value for the least amount of cost that helps the most customers? Reporting is something that I personally have always struggled with, because if you think about reporting, it could be the most valuable feature in ConfigMan. We collect so much data, and it's sitting in that in those SQL databases. And then usability of going and writing a report with the ConfigMan complex database schema and no good tools for, kind of drag and drop report authoring. We were locking a lot of that data from customers. On the other hand, my team's not really report or SQL experts, so we're really reliant on other technologies to kind of unlock this. Or we could pause a lot of our other investigations and go to a very focused investment on reporting. It's almost similar to my answer over the years on web UI. Would we freeze all their investment just to redo the UI in the web? And I think that the value wasn't there for the cost. And I do think we need to lower the entry barrier on report authoring. I'm hoping that my team could partner with SQL and Power BI to do that. But there's no path right now to go do it outside of those two products. I guess there is one path. The one path is with tenant attach, we're going to pump a lot of the ConfigMan data into the cloud, and then we'll start having reports and insight value across ConfigMan and Intune and other products, and we will invest a lot in that report technology. I'm curious why the explicit ask of not Power BI. Is that a licensing problem that you're trying to avoid, or is it just not a fan of the Power BI technology? Because Power BI for me is really good at what it does, which is the first or second level drill through on things and easy pivoting. It's not necessarily good at the third or fourth level drill throughs, but that's where reports probably are better.
Okay. Andrew asked a question about app dependencies when a user starts an install through Software Center and there happens to be a reboot on a dependent app. And the ask is that they would like to see a full chain execute when the user starts a software install, regardless of what maintenance windows are applied. So I don't know if you have any comment on that. Yeah,
I think this is a question that would be better if we're in the same room. We could iterate back and forth. I can assume what the ask is. I think this is an ask on tweaking the behaviors around maintenance windows when it's user triggered, and it's hard for us when the ask gets this dependent on number of scenarios, because when we change these behaviors, then we break other customers that depend on this, right? And so it's important for us to understand the scenario. I agree high level with the logic of if it's end user initiated, that should overrule maintenance windows, unless, of course, the admin doesn't want those maintenance windows overruled. But conceptually, we want our end user to think of installing one thing from Software Center. If that thing is an app group or multiple dependency chains, we don't want them to think of it as 5 things. We want them to think of one thing. And the better that we can get the experience to a transactional install for the end user, the better it is. So yeah, it sounds like we probably need another forum, whether it's Twitter or Reddit, to kind of understand more where our gaps here for this customer and figure out what we could do.
Toph asks, is there any plans to improve remote control viewer similar to what TeamViewer does? The selection between the primary screen and all screens is a plus, but it's really not that good of an experience.
Yeah, and the, let's see, I think this is more around, assuming I understand the question, for a long time we didn't have multiple monitor support in ConfigMan, and then we added it, but then we put it all the monitors on one view. Then we got to, you can select it. The problem is in selecting, it has to disconnect remote control and come back in. That the challenge is the remote control technology we have is dependent on terminal server, and we can only do certain things with it. But if you're more specific, kind of what the ask is here, I'm assuming what you're asking is easier switching between monitors or more control over that. Just help us understand the ask, and we can look into what we can do better.
Okay. Let me go down here. Is there a plan to allow Windows Virtual Desktop machines to be managed by Intune?
It's something we're looking at, yes.
Okay, John, that's John's stuff. Okay, I think we are getting close down here. Actually, the person that asked about Power BI earlier has been a little bit. Are there better ways to connect Power BI to Config Manager without connecting directly to the database, a web service or something else?
Rob or Jason, you guys have any ideas?
Hey, Donnie, can you say that again? I'm busy answering questions.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, I've got, this is Adam. I've played around a little bit, and it's still not quite there, but there is an OData connector via the admin service that you can connect Power BI to. So I don't know if that's a desirable way to go, but it's at least a way to get to the data without direct database connectivity in Power BI or anything else that can consume the OData feed.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Adam. And I guess I'd have to understand the business requirement we're trying to get around. Like, is it you want to build Power BI for executives and you don't want them to have access to the database, so you need to hop the data to something else? And I don't know, maybe using the ConfigMan data warehouse and pumping the data there, and then putting a Power BI on top of that, or definitely, what Adam was suggesting is a possibility. You just would have to think about how to write your RBAC rules for, kind of the exact level. Yeah, help us understand the scenario a little more, because when we can focus on doing fewer things but doing them better, we can do those things better. So I want to really think about how many different ways to enable reporting for ConfigMan. Definitely, it's a gap we got to do better. But helping us understand these scenarios is really interesting. One scenario that we talked about a lot, and this actually came from Brad, who looks like he's up in about 10 minutes, is we in ConfigMan product haven't done a good job of helping people that use the product to manage up their management chain, the value that they bring. Unfortunately, sometimes the challenge with being in IT is people only are aware of you when something bad goes, when something wrong happens. And so making sure that we do a better job of getting data or managing up data to the people that manage your budgets, or say yes or no on new initiatives or new hardware, making sure they understand the value that you're bringing, or the change that you're able to drive. And so if this ask is about help us give better reports to you know, the CTOs in our company or whatever, help us understand what those are and what those data are, because that's something that's on the top of our list to go build, and definitely to amplify or magnify the value that IT brings.
Okay, so we have more questions, David, but I didn't know if you wanted to go over some slideware. We are at about 8 minutes out.
Yeah, Diane, let me cover a few slides. And you know, if you're watching this and this is recorded, what I'd suggest is go watch all the sessions earlier than me, because they went into depth on a lot of these things. So I'm just going to cover them very lightly. But you know, one of the things here I would say about this picture is, and Brad talked about this last year in Ignite, is rebranding the way we talk about, you know, Microsoft Intune or Configuration Manager is Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And really the way to think about this is there's multiple ways, technologies out there that are managing agents. You know, we have a couple now with Intune and Config now. We'll probably have more in the future. Our goal is to build like an master enterprise device list in Microsoft Endpoint Manager UI where you could see them all, and then from one place run reports against those, or initiate actions against those, or get insights against those. And so this unification really is going to give you more data, more power, and more reach kind of at your fingertips. So think about that. Even if right now with tenant attached, all you do is there's only a few features you can see, the value that we will add here and that we'll be able to add here is going to be immense. Let's see, the other thing I'd say is, you know, every May normally I get to do a State of the Union, usually with Jason and Aaron, but I had to skip it this year. So I just thought, here, what's some interesting data points off the top of my head, just people that work in config might be interested in. And a couple things I'd say, you know, 14 production releases have shipped. Basically, we've shipped like clockwork every 4 months for the last 5 years. We did slip our slowing a little later in May this for 2002, but we really were focused on the high quality. And you know, it was a challenge not seeing my team face to face for the last 4 months and still being able to ship, but we were able to pull it off. And what I'd say is the adoption of that release matches all our previous releases. So even with the world kind of pivoting to work from home, we still see the same deployment motions and the same upgrade velocity that we always see. Next version 2006 is basically co-complete, and we're starting testing. We always test, but we're starting our end game for testing. So if you're one of our TAP customers, you can expect to see it in you know, early next month and probably the end of next month for the public. There's a lot, like the slide I teased a little earlier, there's a lot of work for home value in there, a lot of CMG improvement, lot of tenant attached improvements. Tech previews we shipped every month since May 2015, and sometimes we ship 2 tech previews. So I don't know if there's up to, it's got to be 70 tech previews probably. Our tech preview motion is a pretty good way to kind of see the value that's coming. And the main reason we do it is as we develop features, we'd like to get feedback early enough in our process that we can take the feedback and act on it. So sometimes we'll ship tech previews and the feature only kind of works, but the UI is there, and that UI really helps customers see our thinking and help us understand where we have gaps. So if you want to really influence the features that we're building, install tech previews and give us feedback on it and help us early on to take your scenarios into account. You know, I don't think we have a public number above this one, so I'm just going to go with our last public number so I don't get in trouble. But we have over 150 million clients with ConfigMan, over 200 with ConfigMan and Intune combined. And the part that I'm most excited about is 70% are on the last 2 versions. You know, we really have figured out with the product and with our customers how to ship so the customers can upgrade without friction, keep going and get new value. And that 70% number is one of the ones I'm most proud of. And the way we do it is we use the telemetry to really understand issues. I was looking at 2002 issues. I want to say that we have 30,000 installs on 2002 and maybe 12 upgrade failures that happened on those. So, you know, being able to use data and telemetry to really get insight into issues and respond and fix them quickly is the way that we're able to do this. And, you know, you heard us reference this already. I know a number of you have filed user voice items. I know a number of you filed user voice items that we fixed. So thank you for giving us that inspiration. But we use user voice to influence our innovation investments. And just, you know, I just barely pulled this screenshot, but you can see in user voice, and I think there was 4,000 items, and we have 476 marked completed. So already more than 10% we've finished. And we don't really have this on, but between planned and in progress, I think it's 14%. So, you know, user voice is a really good way to communicate with the product team, with my team, and give us understand how we can make the product better to help you get what you need to get done. Then just some of these big investment areas that we already talked about. Analytics and insights is huge. It's going to be huge. Over the next 3 months, I think you'll see a lot of value pop, and especially if you're tenant attached, because one value with tenant attached is, even though we've been shipping ConfigMan like clockwork every 4 months, tenant attached allows us to add value on the server, on the service side, even without you deploying a new ConfigMan release. And in fact, we just did this with Community Hub. You know, we lit up Community Hub on top of the 2002 release this week, and customers really didn't have to deploy anything to get it. So analytics and insights, you'll see us go really fast with this, and there's 3 or 4 really good features that are in preview already that I expect to pop public in the next few months. Yeah, I think I'm short on time, and I don't want to step on Brad. Anything else, Donnie?
No, I just personally, the Texas System user groups would really like to thank you for showing up, David, and all the Microsoft people. But we do really appreciate you guys taking your time out of your day and doing this, and enduring our abuse during the content. But
yeah, and thanks for inviting me. And I'll stick around if there's more questions. I'll jump over onto the question chat and see how many else I could deal with. And I guess Brad's up next. Thanks, everybody.